What is going on? We are coming back here. First video in a couple of days, but we are talking Texas basketball. My name is Andrew Miller, editor over at Hook'emHeadlines.com, Hook'em Horns football show. We are talking Texas Longhorns basketball today, though, and we got Shane Black, contributor over at Hook'emHeadlines.com. We have wrapped up 2 games so far through the regular season, with the biggest game of the non-conference slate coming up against Gonzaga. And then after that, it's a little bit of a lull, but we got a big game coming up this week. Shane, what are your thoughts on the basketball season so far?
Yeah. So, amidst what's happening on the football field, it's nice to have an outlet with the 12th ranked Longhorns on the basketball court. But they handled their business in first 2 games and wins over UTEP and Houston Christian. You definitely can take away bits and pieces, kind of how Sark paired lineups together. We definitely saw some strengths, some weaknesses. But, all in all, it was nice to see Texas get out on that front foot, win 2 games. Really weren't bothered too much, especially in that Houston Christian game. But, yeah, I'm excited for the basketball season. And excited for this game when Gonzaga comes to the Moody Center on Wednesday. I think the place is going to be rocking. I think Beard is going to have his guys ready to go. And I think it's going to be a really, really good contest and a great chance for Texas to pick up one of the best non-conference wins you can add to your resume. And come March, I don't think this team's going to have to, worry about being on the bubble, but a win over Gonzaga could be a difference, between a 3 or 4 seed, 4 or 5, something like that. So a big opportunity for Texas and Chris Beard on Wednesday.
Shane, I completely agree that the way that the basketball team is moving right now is especially, I'll say this, especially in the front court, I think you have a lot of momentum with a lot of the returning guys. I'm about to do an article this week on the studs and duds so far, and actually I was trying to find a dud, and for me right now it was between Timmy Allen and Arterio Morris, and I don't like that selection. I don't like it because Timmy Allen's been pretty good, and I say pretty good. He's been like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, and that's why I wanted to put him in the duds, is because it's you would hope that Timmy Allen's like a 9 out of 10 to start the season. But Terrio is coming off, to say the least, a tumultuous offseason. And I want to give him the chance to get his way. He's a freshman, and he's got a lot of growth to go on the court. Yeah. And so I want to see that. And so I don't exactly know who I'm going to put there. But to the same note, you got to like that you don't really have a clear choice of a dud.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It has been interesting. Like you said, Timmy Allen probably, playing C basketball right now, but he's one of those guys where in these non-conference games against, lower level teams, I don't know if he always has the motor turned up all the way. But you get to a game like Gonzaga, when you get to Big 12 play, I think not only is his volume going to increase in the offense, but he's going to be more aggressive. He's going to get into the line a ton. So, like you said, it is kind of about getting other guys, especially in the second half, looks like Arterio Morris off the bench, get Dylan Mitchell a little more comfortable, kind of find your footing in the front court, which you were mentioning. And, one note on that, we weren't sure who was going to start. And through 2 games, it's been Dylan Disu over Christian Bishop. After Bishop closed the season starting, I believe, 21 to 22 games last season, I like the way he's embraced kind of and he, from all accounts inside the program, it seemed like he's for the team and he's going to get his minutes. He knows that, and it doesn't seem like not starting is bothering him at all. So I like to see that. And Dylan Disu has shown a lot, seems fully healthy. He's going to slowly, work back that jump shot. He hit a nice couple 15-footers against Houston Christian. But, yeah, you mentioned it. The front court is slowly coming together. at the beginning of the season, it was certainly some question marks. So it'll be interesting to see how they play in a really big matchup against one of the best front court players in the nation, and Drew Timme on Gonzaga.
Yep, we're going to see that again. And, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning of the season where it's like if Dessou is at or near his, I'm not going to say his potential because, like, that he's one of those where it's like you can tell that he's got potential, but to the same note, like he's not one of those where he's not one of those players where you watch his film from high school and it's like, man, he's got elite potential. But like you watch his film as a transfer and it's like, man, if he finds the right system, then he's going to be an all-conference player almost assured if he stays healthy. It doesn't matter where he goes. And so, and I feel like the way he is, if he can fulfill his potential, then like he could have, I mean, he probably has an overseas future.
Yeah, I think he definitely. Yeah, I think he's definitely one of those guys who is going to get some. He's going to be talked about in the NBA waters just because he's lengthy. He has a good-looking shot. We haven't seen it yet this season. He's yet to attempt a three, but he's that kind of like hybrid four-man that could fit in today's NBA. I don't think he necessarily has the talent to end up sticking, but he's certainly a guy where I think he's going to have a successful career overseas. And this season is started out perfectly for him. I mean, he's 8 for 11 from the field. Like I said, a couple jumpers knocked down, pretty aggressive on the boards. I think this is just he's going to keep steps forward, and hopefully by conference play, he's a guy that's, taking a couple threes a game, maybe knocking them down at a 35% clip, swatting a couple shots a game, because we know that Texas needs that action. But yeah, I'm excited. Of course, he's never going to be that 15 and 10 guy he was at Vanderbilt, just purely based on volume inside this Texas offense. But I really like what I've seen from Dessou, and I think he's going to have a pretty good season.
Yeah, I was looking at that just now. Like the per 40 Colt Bot right now is the fourth most read.
Yeah, you make the most of your walk-on minutes, and you're gonna be looking nice in the per 40 numbers.
About 8.5 for 40. But yeah, no, I get what you say, and that brings up an interesting point for me, and I don't want to dig in too much to it because I'm a person who watched the NBA first and then moved to the college game, and I grew up watching the NBA in the 2000s, then transitioned to this three-point revolution, and so I'm one of those people that joined the media in the NBA when three-point revolution was happening, and yeah, so I talked too much about the three ball, but I will say I would like to see Dylan Dessou get involved a little bit, like, because I mean it's not like Chris Beard's trying to hide his three-point ability. That's not what's going on here. And so I would like to see Dessou get a little bit more involved beyond the arc, try to figure out what's going on there before conference play hits, because I will say this, as bad as the Oklahoma schools are looking right now in conference play, we got losses to Southern Illinois and Sam Houston for each Oklahoma school already. And the entire Big 12 is not looking great through non-con so far, and that's going to change. I think it will change, but
yeah, it's been a sluggish start to say the least. TCU surviving against what was it, Pine Bluff or some that they had no business playing a close one against. But yeah, the conference as a whole is going to be interesting, and that's why I almost, some people have been kind of critical of Chris Beard. We talked about this on our preview, how he schedules the non-conference. I am almost like a really big fan of what Texas has going on, because in their non-conference, you have the Gonzaga game, you have the Creighton game, Illinois, And you get Stanford and Tennessee in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. And then, the other 7 or so games are against quad 3 or quad 4 opponents. It's kind of that perfect balance where against those lower level teams, you can really try some things out, use, the second halves as pseudo scrimmages, really mix and match lineups, and then go and test that against some of the better teams in the country. So I really kind of like the way that this non-conference schedule is shaping up. And it's almost like we're seeing it here in the first week and a half. 2 games against inferior opponents that Texas, handled. Now they're going to be able to test what they've learned in these first 2 games against right now the number 2 team in the country in Gonzaga.
Yeah, and you hope offensively that it's just testing things out because, I don't think anyone doubts what Texas can do on the offensive glass. I think from an effort and an athleticism standpoint, that Texas, they've had it the last 2 years, and that's not a question. And I mean, even from an inside game perspective, the only thing that Texas is missing is top end length. Is when you're talking about 7-footers. We don't have those guys, and so from that perspective, Texas is fine. But from another perspective, Texas is shooting the 3 ball at 19% through the first 2 games, and I keep saying it that that might be an issue, and that's where I would like to see Dessou involved a little bit more from the start, is to figure out, okay, where can you stretch the floor? And let's get Dylan Mitchell involved. Let's get Terrio involved. Let's figure out even Tyrese. Let's get the ball in Marcus Carr's hands a little bit more to start as a primary initiator and figure out, okay, where from a catch and shoot perspective, hell, even from a pull-up perspective, where is Tyrese succeeding? I don't think that Chris Beard is doing enough of the experimentation perspective, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I know that. But I don't think he's doing enough from the experimentation perspective, and that would be my main criticism. But to the same note, you're seeing more ball movement than you were last season. You're seeing more team chemistry. You're seeing more communication off ball. The off ball movement is pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. And I think it's more in sync this year than it was last. We're going from a 2-game sample size though, so I'll reserve my opinion.
Yeah. If you look at it, I completely agree with the experimentation point you make. Hunter and Carr are 1 for 14 from deep combined this season, and Dessou has yet to attempt a 3. I don't really understand that. I think there are plenty of offensive sets, whether it's a pick and pop or just kind of flaring Dessou up to the top of the arc for him to get a look, because it's not like this team is a really good 3-point shooting team and and Beard is okay, we don't even need Dessou to shoot this or test it because we already have that covered. That's, quite the opposite. Texas is 7 of 36 from 3, like you mentioned, 19%, currently has them 350th in the nation. We knew this was going to be a problem coming into the season, and it certainly reared its ugly head as the biggest, by far, I will say by far, the biggest concern through 2 games. The rim isn't going to change, and Texas against 2 teams who maybe even aren't the best at guarding out on the perimeter really couldn't knock down open looks. So that is definitely a cause for concern. And like you said, I think you have to see some experimentation with that, because what they got going right now really isn't working. Which, if you want to transition into Gonzaga talk, I think is something that could plague this team on Wednesday night.
Ooh, yeah. Gonzaga is one of those teams that, even though you might not see an elite 3-ball shooting team from the very outset, that they can figure it out. And so this is where it confuses me. I obviously dive into the tech numbers to see what happens with Chris Beard versus without. And they've actually been a worse 3-point shooting team without him than they have with him. I followed the numbers throughout last season. Just took a look at the numbers to confirm this season. And yeah, I was right about 34% from three, and that's actually up from last year. They were around 31, 32%, and they were 35, 36. But, like, if you look at the year over year for us, most of the good three-point shooters were Shock and Smart guys. It was Ramey. It was Jones.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's a combination of personnel and not getting our personnel in positions to succeed. Like when you run this sort of, Chris Beard has said it. He said it in the offseason. He said it after each game, and they were able to run more against Houston Christian. That's just the nature of playing an opponent as inferior as HCU. But when you play this slow, bogged down, half-court style of basketball, you're just not going to find the openings on any level, especially from deep. It's just so condensed. Teams are able to pack it in against you. And I just think, I mean, Beard has said it, but running would open up everything for this team. Because even, you're running 3-on-2. You don't have to take it to the rim every time. That's where you can get a fair share of good looks from the wing. Of course, coaches will say you want to attack the basket in any scenario like that. But you look at some of these high-flying offenses like a Gonzaga, like a North Carolina, they're constantly pushing the pace, getting threes off of that. Like Corey Kispert in his years at Gonzaga lived on the transition three. So I think that's something that Texas should really incorporate it. And it does bug me a little bit because Beard has preached it all off season. He's preached it after games this season that this team has to run. And against a team like Gonzaga, it's going to be put to the test because Gonzaga is going to want to get up and down the court. And I think Texas can play with them doing that. But part of me thinks Beard is just going to tense up and just have his team slow it down and say, okay, Gonzaga, can you beat us in a, half-court punching battle? But it's interesting. It's kind of a catch-22 which way you want to go with that.
Yeah, that is fair. And I don't think that you're 100% right about the adjustments that Beard can make, and that some of the strengths that Texas has shown so far and what you can feel good about versus what you would hope Texas can get better from here on out. But also against Gonzaga, I look at it and I think a lot of Texas fans on the surface, even if you're like a averagely devoted hoops fan, I think you go look at Gonzaga's three-point shooting, you see, okay, they're a team that shot around 30 to 33% from three back half of last season through this season. And it's like, okay, they're not going to shoot the three ball well, but then if you start diving in, you start finding the intricacies here where it's like the guy like Malachi Smith could shoot 60% from three against us.
Yeah.
On 80 around 8 attempts. And it's concerning from that perspective. But you start digging in a little bit more and you start seeing where it's and we'll dig into this later. Anyway, against Gonzaga, I think you're going to have to rely a lot on the perimeter defense to lock things down. And to the same note, you're going to inside scoring, pick and pop. I think the mid-range 2 jump ball, weirdly enough, could play a big role in this season. It's you're seeing this renaissance right now of mid-range shooting in the NBA, and you're starting to see it carry over a little bit more to college.
Yeah.
Where it's it's been ignored for a while, and you're starting to see more fouls drawn, and it's starting to carry over to the college game, and Texas has guys that can do that.
I mean, yeah, looking at it, your 3 best scorers, who are Tyrese Hunter. I mean, this can all be argued because Serge Rice has been, a dude and by far the best 3-point shooter through 2 games. But if I said Texas's best scorers are Tyrese Hunter, Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, you might get some pushback. But my point is, those 3 guys are all way more comfortable in the mid-range. And saying that, you might be like, oh, wow, a guy's more comfortable in the mid-range than he is from 3. At this point, especially at the college level, the mid-range has slowly, like you said, it's making a renaissance. But, the past 5 years has just died out. and guys really don't have that 2-dribble pull-up from the mid-range. But Hunter, Carr, and Allen are all so comfortable at doing that I definitely don't mind that shot and think it will be a big shot for Texas this season. I mean, right now, through 2 games, Texas is shooting nearly 69% from 2-point range, which ranks 9th in the country. Of course, that's a lot of, offensive rebound putbacks, but I think a lot of that is also solid shot making from 12 to 15 feet. So I think that's going to play a big role this season, because there comes a point where it's, okay, Marcus Carr, if you're shooting 25% from deep, why don't you take that dribble and, go in 3 to 5 feet, because you've proven you're much more comfortable from that area.
Yeah, and I will say this. I really, really, really dug into the Marcus Carr stats would be an underestimate. I seriously dug into those when he transferred. And the one thing I found was that, you found the over-reliance on him from Pitt and Minnesota. And I found that when he was shooting I believe it was over 40% from the field, when he was taking double-digit field goal attempts, which was often, because he's a volume scorer.
Yeah.
He's a bucket getter, but he's a different bucket getter than you usually see. He's the guy that you can vary the way he gets his looks. He can distribute, he can rebound. He's not a great 3-point shooter. His shot selection is always going to have its gripes. You always have that, but you can vary the way he gets it anyway. Yes. And so I like the idea of getting him volume looks when he's hot and getting him involved in a way that's more of a secondary or tertiary playmaker, but during the non-con, when you have Gonzaga and then you have the Leon Black Classic, which I believe is UTRGV, and then Rice? Northern Arizona.
Okay.
And so you have that before Creighton. Get him involved in those games. And so anyway, you make excellent points. Man, I love that mid-range stat. I do. College game is going to go through a mid-range renaissance at some point, I think. And Dylan Mitchell's got a phenomenal mid-range shot. Use him. He's averaging 17.3 rebounds per 40 right now.
And half of those or more have been on the offensive glass.
We're going to see Dylan Mitchell become an inside animal.
Yeah. Yep. He's going to feast. Yeah. I mean, he had 8 offensive rebounds against HCU.
Yeah.
Not only is his athleticism off the charts, but he has a knack for finding the ball, puts himself in great positions, what I've noticed through 2 games.
He got that Rodman gene, and it's gonna carry over in ways that I will say I hope that he starts expanding his game, because Texas, from a recruiting perspective, needs to be able to develop NBA talent and expand these prospects games. I will say this, because this is super lazy, and if this is a take that gets out there, it's super embarrassing. Texas has lazily developed talent to go to the NBA, and it's become elite, and it's just because it's the way that Texas is able to recruit for other sports. But start developing talent, and then not only is the recruiting trail going to come pouring in, and you're just going to have top 5 classes delivered to you in hoops, but your transfer portal classes are going to be elite too. Yeah. And your player development will be elite. And then from that point forward, we've got a Final Four team every year. I mean, it's just the way it is in college hoops.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the potential, you mentioned, you didn't coin this term, but you mentioned it last podcast. This Texas basketball program is a sleeping giant that everything right now with, who's leading the program and what they just built, is all trending, to waking up that giant. So I'm excited, and it's all about developing that talent, not just getting the name on the paper, but really work, even if they're just on the 40 for 8 months, really transitioning that player to the NBA. It's what it's about in college basketball these days.
It really is, because you're fighting the G League.
Yep.
And I mean, to land Ron Holland, I mean, God knows, we were talking about last podcast about the potential of landing Ron Holland, and then 2 days after we did.
Yes, that's big. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, Holland isn't a guy who's a knockdown shooter, to say the least. So we're getting another elite athlete with all that potential, and that's where that potential has to be, handled and developed by Texas. We're not getting like the most polished players, but we're getting the 5 stars who could turn themselves into top 5 picks if they really clean up some stuff, especially on the offensive end. So it's going to be big for Beard and his staff to do that, not only with Mitchell this season, but with Holland next season as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the same player, but it's like there's similarities in the way that you would like to see a prospect for the NBA, like Holland developed, like you would like to see Mitchell developed, that you would like to see the 3 game, because I mean, yeah, the 3 ball is not there for Holland right now, and because if 3 ball was there for Holland, he'd be the number 2.
Yeah.
And I mean, same thing for Dylan Mitchell. God knows if the 3 ball was there for Dylan Mitchell, I think he'd be number 1.
Don't disrespect that at all. If he can develop a semblance of a 3-point shot, he is going to be a high draft pick in 2023. But like you said, it goes back to the point of opportunity and Beard giving these guys opportunity and not falling into the same comfortable trap. So that's another thing. I hate it. I hate it at all levels of basketball when you tell guys they can't do certain things like inside of your offense. This goes, all the way down to middle school, where you tell the kid, all right, if you get the ball behind the arc, do not shoot it under any circumstance, even if you're wide open. What good coaching? That's not good coaching at all. How are you going to develop someone if they're not, getting game reps at what they're trying to get better at? So it'll be interesting to see how that goes for Mitchell, because he has yet to attempt a 3 this year as well. So.
Yeah, and I think for Mitchell, that's okay. I think as the season goes along, you'd like to see that confidence improve. Even if he's like a 25% shooter from 3, you'd like to at least see the shooting stroke improve. I don't want to be that guy here. I am going to be that guy. Where again, Oklahoma State grad, I'll say it. Cade Cunningham went to Oklahoma State. And when he committed to Oklahoma State, I was thoroughly taken aback, just like I think most people were, that granted we hired his brother.
Yeah, that helps.
It does. But the way that Oklahoma State was able to open up his game and let him thrive through God knows a bit of controversy, it grew him as a player, and I think he's going to, at a minimum, be a top-tier NBA point guard or a top-tier NBA guard. I don't really know what position he fits at, really, because he's a 6'8" point guard, but...
That's why he's so special, is because you really can't box him in, anything like that.
But he was shooting the ball super poorly because Mike Boynton's offense is super anemic. Mm-hmm. And watching that offense is like watching offenses go to die in basketball. It's the amount of times that I've seen players miss the rim shooting three.
Like shot clock, just forcing something up.
How have you heard the names like Keelan Boone?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Boone had a good game against Texas. One of the last 4 times they met. But
yeah, super senior. He's still got 2 years of eligibility left. That's what I'm saying. It's like these sort of things, like I'm drawing this out to a bigger point here, where it's like in the Big 12, you have these supporting casts that have been here for 3-4 years, and for Texas, you can tell that Chris Beard wasn't hitting the transfer portal as hard. He's trying to establish more continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hope for guys like Dylan Mitchell, like Terrio, like Ron Holland, when he arrives to campus, and we'll dig into this in just a moment, of like AJ Johnson, if he does commit to Texas, that like, I hope you get this level of continuity where it's like, okay, you have these veterans that the roles they're filling, and you can start to expand your game from there. You know what risks you're able to take. You know what you're able to do. And as the season moves along, you can start making these strides. You can start saying like, hey, these NBA guys, they're getting it. They're understanding what I'm able to do. And it really expands your confidence in ways that are hard to measure. And that's my own take on it. That's just from what I've seen. But yeah, I mean, I hope the experience is there. And so, yeah. But okay, let's dig into it here. Okay, for the Gonzaga game, we're 30 minutes deep at this point. Well, I can talk hoops forever because I really can. I used to do it forever. So, game perspective, how do you think the game's going to go? What's your prediction for the game? We can get into score predictions right away, or you can just dig into the flow of it.
Yeah, so I was able to watch Gonzaga play Michigan State on Friday night on the aircraft carrier in San Diego, which was awesome. Yeah, awesome for college basketball to see that. It certainly doesn't lend itself to an offensive game because you're playing outside on an aircraft carrier.
Dump it inside, see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that you could tell with the way the team shot the ball. I think Michigan State and Gonzaga were combined like 7 of 34 from deep or something like that. Still better than Texas in 2 games inside, but I digress. But yeah, I mean, this team they run through Drew Timme. Texas saw that last season when Timme scored 37 on them and really couldn't be stopped. So the one thing that I took away, this Gonzaga team compared to any of the last, 4 editions of this team, they don't have a true number 1 point guard, like a guy who's going to bring the ball up, run the offense. It was Andrew Nembhard the past couple seasons. Jalen Suggs, when he was there paired with Andrew Nembhard, they had 2, true point guards. And even before that, it was Josh Perkins. But this team doesn't have a guy who really commands the offense. They have a lot of good scorers. Rasir Bolton, formerly of Iowa State, in his second year in Gonzaga, I think it's fair to argue he is the best 3-point shooter in the country. Quick release. Mark T does a wonderful job of getting him running baselines, and you're going to see him take and make a lot of threes, especially in the Moody Center. I could see Bolton going for a big game, just like you mentioned. Malachi Smith, who I'll talk about now too, was the mid-major player of the year last year. I forget. I think he was Chattanooga. I'm not sure exactly, but he was the mid-major player of the year. Yeah, at Chattanooga. And he's another guy who can take and make the 3-point shot. Julian Strawther, who's like a 6'7" guard, he's kind of been bringing the ball up a lot, which is interesting because he doesn't have the tightest of handles, but his role is completely taken on new meaning this year. And he's a guy who, if he gets going, can score from all 3 levels. But my point to make is all 3 of those guys I just mentioned are good scorers, but they're not really pass-first players. So getting the ball to Timme has been a little bit of an issue. Timme right now leads the team in assists with 3 per game. So that's kind of an interesting note. So I think Texas should try to front Drew Timme, make it as hard as possible on the catch. Force him 12 feet out. We don't want him catching the ball 6 feet away from the basket on the block, because if he gets good position, it's game over. He runs basically the Mikan drill down low with how he uses his drop steps and just basically gets wide open layups every time. And I wouldn't consider Disu or Bishop great post defenders. So, yeah, if he catches it down low, it's going to be rough sledding all night. The one thing that I will I kind of ask you, because I haven't really come to like a full formed opinion either way on what Texas should do in this scenario, but Michigan State was double teaming Timmy a good amount, or at least trying to combat their size, like the size they were giving up, especially when Sandhauser was on the floor. That just leaves Gonzaga's shooters wide open for the most part. You got to play really good scramble defense. Gonzaga is good at moving the ball in that fact. So do you think that it's smart for Texas to double? I think at first I'd prefer to just really try to force Timmy out of a comfortable spot, because if you double him and leave guys like Malachi Smith, Rasir Bolton, Julian Strawther, even a Nolan Hickman open, I think they're going to beat you that way. They're going to knock down 10 to 12 threes, and even if Timmy doesn't go for his 22 that he's averaging, if Timmy's even at 15, you might look up and see Gonzaga having knocked down 12 3-pointers, and I don't think that's a sustainable way for Texas to win this basketball game.
Man, God knows. So as a person that comes from the world of advanced analytics, and that, man, let me stop right there, because I sound like a fucking knob. And yeah, I will say this. College hoops right now is in this world right now of complete strategy change, trying to deal with the transfer portal, and college hoops was going through this 3-point, because like the 3-point line moved.
Yeah.
And it was in this world of like 3-point change, advanced analytics renaissance in college hoops, and now we're in this world of like de-renaissance. And what I look at is Julian Strawther's advanced stat line to see the story of Gonzaga basketball this year, to see that to deal with the change they've gone through, they're trying to rely on getting to the free throw line more, which, I mean, Texas is clearly relying upon too. Here's what I think for Gonzaga is, like, okay, Malachi Smith is in this rhythm where, like, the dude is used to getting contested threes against defenders that he knows aren't as quick as him. And so get these guys like get disruptors out on him. Get disruptors that are playing close D that aren't going to foul him out on him. Tyrese Hunter, I think, could be a formidable defender, but like, here's the thing I like is that, like, you have different options.
Yeah.
To go with against him, but you got to be quick with your decision making, because Malachi Smith's going to be quick at adjusting. If I'm just being realistic on it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, he's proven himself. Like I said, mid-major player of the year, averaged 19 a game at Chattanooga last season. He can score in bunches at all three levels, and that's kind of scary, especially because he's come off the bench the first two games. So he's like, we talk about Texas, guys slowly transitioning into their role. Malachi Smith's a guy who, come March, he could be the second most important player on this team besides Timmy.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm of the opinion that, like, you've got so many experienced guys in the front court that, like, go super aggressive on the first move at Julian Strawther and then start laying off. Like, play soft defense if he's moving close toward the basket, and then this is where I like a guy like Disu, where it's like, this dude's got these second efforts that can, like, watch his blocks. This dude's getting these second efforts. He's averaging 2 blocks a game so far. Watch those blocks. He's getting up there. He's not making contact to the body, and he's still getting the basketball. That is what you love to see from a college hoops perspective. And so I'm going to say this, that Texas in weird way, but like they matched up well last year and you saw what happened. And so it's like you hope that Chris Beard realizes his advantages this season because like look at the stat sheet. And it's like I don't mean to bring up football. I don't because that's lazy in a lot of hoops comparisons, but like if you look at football, you see a lot of the intricacies where it's like, if you look at the advanced stats, you can be like, wow, coordinators didn't do their full homework. And so you hope that the basketball team doesn't go through the same lessons to be learned. Gonzaga is a great team, and I'm going to say if they lose to them at home, fine. But like, you want to see the young players make strides. I mean, out of the old guys, you hope that they don't have if they have complete meltdowns, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And I mean, you want to see a good crowd because, like Gonzaga, it doesn't have to be a win. It really doesn't. But it has to be a momentum builder because you do need to be Creighton. I will say that you need to be Creighton. It would be really nice to have a win over Tennessee. And to have a good performance against Gonzaga, to be able to say, like, non-con, we got this. We have that confidence in the staff that we can adjust. I think that's the big thing coming out of that game. And so that's what I'm going to say. You make a lot of good points about what Gonzaga does well. And, I mean, they do a lot of things well. They're the number 2 team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of NBA prospects on that team. But, like, Strother, oh, dude, I don't know if you've seen this. His assist percentage is a third of what it was last season. His free throw rate is more than double what it was.
Yeah, I mean, just watching from the naked eye on Friday night, he went from a guy who, was like the 5th option on that team last year to now he's up in it, and he's doing a lot of what I'd like to see Timmy Allen doing, 6'7" guard/forward who is pretty comfortable with the ball in his hands, just attacking the rim. And Mark Few's letting him go, which is nice. And I mean, I believe those two. It'll be interesting how the matchups go. I think you could see Mitchell on Strother at times, but for a lot of the game, I think it'll be Allen and Strother, going back and forth. And they're guys who, if they get the rebound, they're running with the ball themselves, and they also can kind of play off ball well too. So I think a matchup inside the game to watch is going to be Allen versus Strother, and whoever gets the better of that matchup will go a long way in their team, final outcome.
It's a fair point. The matchups, God knows there's any number of ways that could go. And I say that, and it's going to be like a super pedestrian game. But like, I think this game is going to be one that like you look at from like an NBA perspective. And it's going to be super interesting because you see a bunch of guys that are going through transition in their roles right now. And you're seeing the very foundations of how that's built. Like Dylan Mitchell, Terrio, I mean, Tyrese Hunter hopefully has an NBA future. Yeah. I mean, on the Gonzaga side, there's like 6 guys, I think, at least, that could have a chance at the NBA. So, yeah, okay, let's get into score predictions.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's so tough. If you look at KenPom right now, obviously it's 2 games in, super small sample size, but adjusted offense, Gonzaga is 1 in the country, and adjusted defense, Texas is 1 in the country. So, on paper, it's a battle of 2 of the best strengths in the country. That said, I think we're gonna finish somewhere in the low 70s, and I've been going back and forth on this. And you could ask me 15 minutes before tip off on Wednesday, and I could lean the other way. But right now, I just think Texas is hasn't shown me anything from 3-point range to muster any confidence that this team will be able to score with Gonzaga. And I think the Zags will put up, I'm going 73-66. I'll go 73-67 as my pick for Gonzaga, which is unfortunate because while I do think Gonzaga is probably going to finish the year somewhere around 28-4 and likely be a 1 seed, I do think this is the more beatable Zags team of the past half decade. I just don't trust Texas enough in their current state on the offensive end to be able to really manufacture points when they need to. I think Texas is going to do well for a good portion of this game at defending Gonzaga and what they like to do. But we saw against Michigan State, they were down 45-33 in the second half, and then they went on an 11-0 run just like that to cut it. So there's going to be a couple stretches in this game where Gonzaga knocks down a couple threes paired with maybe a Timmy and one and a Timmy easy bucket. And it's how Texas responds to that, specifically on the offensive end. And while I can see them responding well once, maybe twice, I don't see it, really coming together for a full 40 minutes. So I got Gonzaga 73-67. I hope I'm proved wrong. I think I could be proven wrong, but that's just what I'm going with at the moment.
Yeah, I've been going with Gonzaga 78-70. Gonzaga against good non-con teams tries to play a little bit more up-tempo to try to make their strengths a little bit more pronounced. And I think that is going to carry over to this game. I say that, and there's going to be someone in the comment section that rips me apart for it.
I'd be shocked if Gonzaga doesn't try to speed this game up, because the way that Beard, and we talked about pace throughout this whole podcast, but I know Beard is going to want to turn it into a dogfight in the half court, because especially with the Corral, which is the new student center at the new student section at the Moody Center, that favors Texas. Just with the crowd being crazy loud and possessions lasting 25 seconds each. That game favors Texas, and few knows that. So, like you just mentioned, I would be shocked if Gonzaga wasn't trying to turn this into a track meet.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's what they did last season. They weren't getting the ball up court super fast, but when they did get it into the settled half court, the ball movement wasn't super fast, but the ball movement into the primary initiator was fast.
Yeah,
and
it had purpose.
Yeah, and it's been similar. It was an aircraft carrier game, so I'm not counting that but the way that Gonzaga moves against a team like a Texas or a team like a Villanova or a team like a Michigan State is it's with purpose.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to finish when they can, because if you don't, you're going to pay. And I think Mark Few knows that. And so that's why because I do think that Texas is going to try to find ways in game to adjust. And I will say this is where you get basketball compared to football, where it's I think the basketball players on this team are a little bit more prepared in game to say, okay, Carr is a really, really good in game adjuster as a defender. Watch that dude's off-ball play perimeter on defense. It's solid. I don't mean to be that guy, because I think Marcus Carr is the least favorite player on this Texas team for Texas fans.
Unfortunately, you're probably right, but I where I see that, to be fair, in some instances, I don't like that. I don't like that sentiment, but I don't think you're wrong.
I think offensively is where it really manifests itself, but his shot selection is not great, but that's always been a thing. Yeah, okay. For a million years. It'll be fun. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it. And you know what? As a guy that covers the NBA draft still, from a Texas perspective, this is the game that you can rewatch. And it has a lot of replay value. So I'm excited for it. But let's get in a little bit to recruiting, and we'll cap it on that. So we got Ron Holland, and let's dig in a little bit there. I talked about it a few months ago. I did an article on it where I said, and I'll link it below, because I like the scouting job there, and I like what I said, what he can bring to the table. It's very relevant now, where the way that he's expanded his game fits well with Chris Beard's system, that he's become a lot more of an aware defender on and off ball, where it's like, you don't always get that out of some of the forward recruits that we have, that like right away he's ready to make an impact defensively. But on the offensive end, like, he knows where his contributions lie. He's a very smart player. It's interesting. He's a different recruit when you really dig into it. Have you watched? Like, I'm curious to know, because I've covered him for a while. I've talked to him a bit before. It's interesting. What are your thoughts on his game?
So, I think the thing that stands out when you watch, I haven't been able to watch like a full game of him playing, so it always is a little bit dicey going through highlight tapes or trying to show off the best parts of players' games. I think the one thing that I've taken away, a super intense guy, which I think fits perfectly with Chris Beard. Like, he's a dog. He's an alpha dog out there. Has a ton of length. Always seems to be disrupting passing lanes on the defensive end. And then he's adept at, bullying smaller defenders. He has like a decent arsenal of moves kind of in the short post. Yeah. But what you don't see, and when you're watching highlight tapes, you almost have to take away stuff you don't see. There's not a lot of him isolation dribbling. He doesn't create his own shot super well, like especially when he starts from 25 feet out. He's not a guy who's going to take someone one-on-one and hit a 15-foot pull-up. But the framework is there for him to turn into a great player and a future NBA player. I mean, there's a reason he's a 5-star player, 12th ranked guy, I believe, in the consensus. But, yeah, I think the major thing that I think fits perfectly with Beard and Texas culture is his attitude. I think he's going to completely buy in. And, yeah, I'm excited. I think it's another guy, though, who, especially when he first steps on the 40 and throughout non-conference play next season, you're going to have to manufacture his offense. He's not a guy you give it to him and tell him to go. But, yeah, I think definitely a huge get, because if you're, don't follow recruiting as close and you're a Texas fan, a couple days ago you go to 24/7 Sports and see Texas has 0 committed players in the 2023 class approaching first signing day. That's a little, disheartening, but there's certainly things happening behind the scenes, and I'm glad Holland was able to put pen to paper a couple days ago.
You mentioned things happening behind the scenes. That seems to be the story for Texas the last few cycles. You say, like, the way that the offense would move, you're just like, yeah, Ron, go eat your buckets. And it'd be a lot like if you just handed the ball to Greg Brown and we're like, yeah, dude, go get your buckets. It's not the offense you want.
Yeah.
And so that's where you hope that Texas lands a compliment, like I mentioned earlier in the video, 5-star AJ Johnson. Transferred out of Donda Academy. Unless you're a hip-hop fan, which I am, but I don't need to dig into that. Unless you, at this point, probably know why he transferred out of Donda. Actually, I think it might have shut down for good. I don't know. Anyway, he is now at Southern California Academy. Whatever. AJ Johnson is, from watching his film, the epitome of a modern point guard, if that's a good way to put it. Have you watched him a whole lot?
I haven't. I haven't done a ton on Johnson, so I'll kind of defer to you.
So Johnson, okay, So Johnson, he's got some immaturities in his game for sure, but that's where you hope it's developed a little bit. He's about 6'5", I believe, about a 6'8" wingspan. He's about 180 pounds. So, I mean, a little bit of room to grow to build that game, to be able to get a little bit more push on the inside. But, I mean, the guy is a playmaker from the inside out or from the outside in. Whatever way you want to spin that. He's got a lot of bounce in his game, but is really, really potent from the perspective that he can pull up from a lot of different areas on the court. He's a decently polished three-point shooter. He knows where he's good, and so he can move the ball around. He can command the settled half court, which is insanely potent. He's the type of player that if everyone else is understanding what's going on around them, that the offense is extremely lethal. And like the off-ball movement then becomes extremely imperative, but like at times Chris Beard's off-ball movement has been pretty good, and you could see that fitting in quite well to the point where it's like if you got that type of player in the offense, that it then becomes like, whoa, that ball movement is one of the best in the country. And when you have a player that can do the type of things inside like a Ron Holland can, that the offense is, you suddenly have like 2 or 3 lottery picks that are functionally moving together. And so it's fun to think about. I won't say that A.J. Johnson is a lock for Texas, because that's not the case. But A.J. Johnson, I would say at this point, Texas is probably one of the 2 schools that is in a great position for him, because also the competition for him isn't the schools that you would expect. It's not the UNCs, it's not the Dukes, it's not the Kentuckys of the world. Texas's competition here is mostly Arizona State and LSU. And I think that he could go to Arizona State. I really do. Arizona State has landed 5 stars in the past.
Yeah.
They have a good relationship built there, but like this is a kid that Texas could legitimately land. And I think Texas is actually the front runner right now.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is like about being able to pull up from anywhere and, kind of that sort of offensive game would be a perfect guy to pair with Ron Holland in this class. Because not to look too far ahead, but there's a good chance that Carr could be gone. I mean, Carr will be gone after this season. And if Tyrese Hunter develops a three-point shot, he also is probably gone. That one's still more up in the air, but you really need a guy who can come over and come in and take over the backcourt next season. So, yeah, I mean, everything on paper for A.J. Johnson looks to be a very exciting player inside this Texas system.
And mind me if I'm wrong here. Yeah, he was the one. Okay. Wait, was he the one? Was he the one that Kevin Durant? Yeah, he was the one that Kevin Durant came to work out with.
Yeah, he was there when Durant was there. Yep.
That was the turning point.
Yeah, that's huge. That's big time. The buy-in that Kevin Durant's kind of given this program over the past, like that we've seen the past. What was that, like a month ago? That's so awesome.
I don't know what Chris Beard is doing here during the offseason because John Morant came in for a workout.
Yeah. I don't know, but that's good. I'll take it.
And since then, John Morant and A.J. Johnson have been in contact on social media.
Wow.
And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's happening there exactly. Like, I mean, I do like from the perspective, like setting up from Texas perspective, like from like between like networking there, I don't like But I mean, obviously, it's making things happen for Texas, and so I mean, yeah, that's working well in our favor, and so I mean, I think if Texas lands the AJ Johnson in this class, because like even with Ron Holland, I think Texas is like the number 40 class in the country right now, number 50, somewhere in that range. It's like, I mean, yeah, landing 1 5-star is great. I mean, landing Ron Holland is freaking massive. I've talked about it since the summer, what he would do for Texas. But like landing AJ Johnson along with that is at this point a dream class because Texas has put all their eggs in about 5 baskets since the very start. I have covered this hoops recruiting class for about 2 years now. And yeah, I Shaka Smart was the head coach at the time, and he wasn't doing much because I think he knew the hot seat he was sitting on. And so he was very much going after his guys. And I mean, Ron Holland still at the time, because everyone was going after him, was still one of those guys. And I mean, Chris Beard's been going after the guys, and he might get them. And that's huge. I don't know, man. I think if we get AJ Johnson, that at that point, you got to start becoming like, okay, at that point, you have to at least be making it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to like it's tough to put floors and ceilings on a team like that. But with the talent, I completely agree. Especially that talent that's probably going to mesh pretty well. But there's been so much turnover with basketball rosters with the transfer portal. Especially there's 6 seniors on this Texas team that the roster next season, regardless of who's in the class, is going to look completely different and is probably going to have a couple dynamic transfers in there too. But I think just in general, if you want to make a more broad statement of Chris Beard has to make a Sweet 16 by his 3rd year. Like with the way this program is trending and how he's recruiting high school and the transfer portal, it would be a massive failure and certainly would take a couple upsets in the tournament for Texas not to make a Sweet 16 in one of the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I mean we're going on over an hour at this point. Okay, so let's leave it at this, and we can give our finishing thoughts too. From what you've seen so far, who is your one player that you think is going to take a big stride this season?
That's an interesting question. So I'll let you touch more on Sir'Jabari Rice because you were really high on him in the offseason, and that's kind of come to fruition through 2 games. I think my main takeaway through 2 games is I think slowly but surely as Texas fans, start to transition out of the football season into basketball season and are regularly watching this team, they're going to fall in love with Tyrese Hunter. He's struggled a little bit with turnovers, but every turnover that he makes is not from a lack of effort. It's just a little bit of a miscommunication being it the first couple games he's playing with these guys. But, man, he gives 110% effort every time he's on the court. Absolute dog. Seems completely bought into the culture. And on top of that, he has the skills to back it up. He's leading the team in points right now. Maybe assists too. I'm not positive. But, I think we made our predictions at the beginning of the season about who would lead the team in points. I think we both ended up on Marcus Carr. I think Hunter and Carr are probably going to take the same amount of shots. And Hunter's probably just going to be the more efficient player. So I think Hunter has a chance of being like a 15-5-4 guy this season for Texas and being an all-conference type of player, which you might ask, why did that change through 2 games? I don't really have a great answer for you. I think he just really has a strong command of this team, and they trust him with the ball in his hands. And, he's proven to be the guy who is going to bring it up court, 80% of the time. So my main takeaway and who I think is really going to, play really well this season is Tyrese Hunter.
Yeah, I don't want to get another rabbit hole open here. I will say I'm a big guy of assist to turnover ratio and why that's happening. It's fairly simple with Tyrese so far. I think it's a lack of chemistry with the front court.
100%.
Because I think it's 4 assists and 6 turnovers so far. I will say this. He had 4 turnovers in the first half with Texas. And it was 4 turnovers at half against UTEP. And UTEP was a very athletic defense that I don't think a whole lot of people were expecting. If you're super in-depth, UTEP is very athletic. They have a ton of length. They get hands in the passing lane. Like, really, I don't think anyone else does in the Conference USA. But that's really in-depth. And so maybe someone else does, but they have an insane amount of length. They play. It seems like were they playing 3 forwards the entire game?
Yeah, I mean, if like you could, 3 guys who had wingspans of at least like 6'8".
It seems like every single time they took a shot, that a guy with a 7-foot wingspan was taking a 3 with a shooting stroke that was underdeveloped.
Yeah, that's a fair statement, which makes a team like that all the more scary as the season advances.
They're good.
But yeah, glad we caught them early.
They're disruptive, and so yeah, I will say this, that I think, Tyrese's assist to turnover is going to improve. To the same note, and Carr is leading in assist to turnover right now because I think he's the most seamless transition.
Yeah.
But usage rate, I think Carr is not. I would hope. Yeah, Timmy Allen leads in. Wow. Timmy Allen then Terrio, then Carr, then Hunter, but it's slim, very slim. What I'm getting at here is I think that. Serge Ibaka is my favorite because I love those grinders that can get stuff done under the radar. Andrew Jones is a bad example because who didn't like him? But you could not be a fan of him. He was, but also his two-way game for what he became was so underrated. It was insane. What he did off ball was invaluable to this team. And I think that Serge Ibaka is going to largely take that role. And I think that's the reason he was brought in. I think that Marcus Carr is going to have to pick up the pace off ball a little bit for Ramey because Courtney Ramey did a lot of things off ball that I think Texas fans notice, but you don't necessarily realize when he's gone. So that leaves me at this point with Dylan Dessou. I like what Dylan Dessou can do for this team. I really do. I like what he's shown in the first 2 games. I think his limitations at this point will be brought about by health or Chris Beard. That's super lazy to say, but I think we've seen enough from Dylan Dessou from a program that has chronically underdeveloped players. May I remind you? Let me check just to be sure. I will. Yep. That I do believe. Oh, they were 1 year apart. Sorry, never mind. They were 1 year apart. I was trying to see if Darius Garland and Dylan Dessou were on the same team at Vanderbilt. They were not. It was 1 year apart, but Vanderbilt is a program that is chronically underdeveloped NBA talent. They've recruited well. They've recruited really, really well. I've liked a lot of the players they brought in. I remember Saban Lee during his recruitment. I was a huge fan of. and he has not developed into the player I thought that he would. He had a really good 3-ball stroke to the point where, like, at time. Do you remember, like, Tony Snell?
Yeah. Who can forget the Tony
zeros?
Oh, me. You can't forget that.
The triple single.
Yeah.
The Roy Hibbert effect. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think that, like, I really think that a player like Dylan Dessou, if he's put in the right system, can be utilized well. I will jump to the NBA here because it's lazy, but I think it's the right way to look at it, where it's like, if you look at the way a team like the Warriors builds their system, a guy like Jordan Poole didn't become the player he's become because he just developed. It's because the right pieces were put around him. Jordan Poole's not developing into this insanely good off-ball shooter because he just developed and became a great off-ball shooter. It's because he's got a guy like Draymond Green setting screens for him, or getting that dribble handoff that he can move off ball and get that fade away from the elbow like he likes. And so I think Dylan Dessou, he loves that shot from the elbow.
Yeah.
He can get above the arc. Like, he's not a good corner 3 shooter. He's not that guy that's going to live in the corners, because you don't want that. He's a really good rebounder. He's a good shot blocker. Anyway, I think there's development here, and I think Chris Beard is smart enough to know how to utilize him. And I think we've seen his improvement in shot block. God knows we need a rim protector. Maybe it's just me wanting a rim protector.
It would help. It would certainly help.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So yeah, Dylan Dessou, and for a few reasons, but I think hope and rim protection are.
Yeah, I mean, if D2, if he turns into a 10-8 guy this year, who's solid on defense, this team's ceiling massively increases.
I don't know if anyone remembers this from the non-con last season, but I think our highest shot blocker was at 1.8 blocks per game during the non-con. And that is a little bit annoying. So anyway, might be a little bit of digging through sports reference on that one, but
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, finishing thoughts.
Yeah, I just say, in general, positive start regardless of Gonzaga result. I think Texas will be at least 4-1 heading into that Creighton game. Knock on wood. Hopefully 5-0. That'd be awesome. But yeah, good momentum. I think you just want to see steps forward with a team that we've mentioned. Is trying to build that continuity together. If Gonzaga specifically, I think it's important. If from a fan perspective, watch how Beard guards Timmy early, because I don't think he's going to let Timmy once again go for 37. So if Texas gets too aggressive and Gonzaga starts knocking down threes off of Timmy passes, which Timmy's a very good post passer, that could be an issue and something that the Longhorns will have to adjust on the fly. But yeah, I'd say just make it hard on the guards to make the entry passes on the inside, and hopefully we have another sold out crowd in Moody on Wednesday. I expect it would be, and that helps Texas, and hopefully both of our predictions are wrong.
Let me ask you this question. Would you hope, from a split perspective, that Drew Timme is a better road or home player?
What I hope, or what I think?
What you hope?
I mean, I would hope he's a better home player, just because I could see this going the other way, just because I got that Christian Laettner villain vibe to him. But I mean, is that where you're going with this? Yeah. He seems like a guy who loves to just quiet crowds. So he's going to be extra motivated on Wednesday.
Sweet Jesus. I was hoping for a better line than the other to make a story out of that. But yeah, no, he averages 15 points. Yep, no, he averages 15 points, 6 to 7. Yep, nope, same line. Okay. He's actually better in neutral sites. So yeah, nothing to dig into there. Anyway, man, I hope coming out of it's Wednesday night. I hope coming out of that game that we can say, because it's lazy to want to say that our young players have a good game, that Timmy Allen and Marcus Carr might be okay. That's what all Texas fans want to hear. But I want to say coming out of that game that, like, yeah, we have something working from distance, and that if we can out-rebound and that, like, we can protect the rim against a team like Gonzaga, that means that we can scheme up something that can play with any team in the country.
Definitely.
And so that's what I want to see. If we win, great. But if we can come out with those things out of that game, that means that in March and April, like, damn, we got a contender on our hands.
Yeah, that's what's so good about these major non-conference games. Really get a glimpse of what you have pretty early into the season.
And then Creighton, we got a whole different bunch of things to watch. And so there's some NBA players on Creighton, but it's like from an NBA perspective, we got 6-7 guys that I like definitely will be NBA draft picks coming out of these two teams. So if you're looking for those games that, like, in June when, like, there's no sports to watch, that ESPNU is rerunning a million times a day, Texas Gonzaga is probably going to be one of those games.
Definitely. Yeah. Hopefully it lives up to the billing. I think it will.
For sure. I'm excited for it, man. I when we did the preview show a few days ago, God knows a week ago at this point, for me, it'd been a while since I talked about, like, basketball stats and advanced analytics, things like that on a live stream. And so, I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the season. And, for the Texas basketball fans out there, our preview show did pretty well. And I don't mean to be one of those guys on YouTube that says that, like, our subscriber rate and our whatever, 80% of our viewers aren't subscribed. But, like, I think we had probably 300 views between the two videos in the first week, and the average length of those views was about 30 minutes. And
I think if you make it this far, you might as well give us a subscribe, because what we've noticed between our basketball pods, we can be a little long-winded, but I think some people, especially this fan, I think Texas has, I wouldn't even call it a niche fan base, but the people who care about this basketball program really care about it and love it. And I think we're two people who kind of fall into that category and really want to see it succeed. So yeah, if you made it this far, definitely drop to subscribe, because I don't know what plans you have for the show, but I think at least once a week we'll be on the horn talking Texas ball this winter.
Yeah, God knows I can talk about it forever.
Yeah,
I've done some deep digs and will continue to do so. But yeah, you're treated to NBA caliber talent every year, and it's a lazy thing to say for Texas, but God knows if you look at it, I think right now Texas has the fourth most NBA players with starting minutes in the NBA right now.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's not a joke. It's really not. It's not. Texas basketball has produced a lot more NBA talent than the Texas football has NFL talent. So do with that what you will. But you're treated to more talent on the court than you are on the gridiron recently, which is unfortunate. But from a basketball perspective, it means you should pay attention to this.
Certainly.
And so, yeah, I mean, you're right. And I think, we'll probably be back at least once per week talking about this. So, but yeah. Okay. So, I think I'll at least be coming back with the post-game show for the Gonzaga game. And I will probably come back with one more for Creighton, which is
December 6th, or December 1st, I think.
Yep. First. So we got a couple of weeks. And then we got the Leon Black Classic, which is a weird home and home deal between UTRGV and Boston. But I get the promotion between the two campuses. So anyway, that is pretty much it. We have gotten a ton of content in for y'all today, to say the very least, for basketball. For me, Andrew Miller at hook'emheadlines.com, Shane Black, Hook'em Headlines. We'll link up some of our work below because we have done, Shane's done a lot of good work for Texas basketball, and I will continue to do so as the season moves along. So, that is pretty much it. Hook'em.